I'm married to Mr. Nice Guy. How do I do this?
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Brannon, what's going on?
Oh, not much. You know, I got a bone to pick with you.
Oh no, what do I do now?
Dude, we are scheduling guests. People want to come on our show, and you went in and jacked up our scheduling thing, man.
I totally messed it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you trying to make it so just you and I talk all the time, or what?
Well, you know that I love the sound of my own voice, so maybe I did it subconsciously.
It was a narcissistic thing?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it might be. So
No.
so what happened, is that we have multiple systems that all funnel into the same places. So we have the place where people can go to sign up for the show, which is at therapybros.com. So therapybros.com. And then you can just hit submit a question, and then you can either write a question, but if you want to be a guest, there's also a button that says be a guest on the show. Hit that button, and then it'll lead you to a place where you can schedule a time to come on and be the caller. So what happened is, people can go through the website there and sign up to be on the show, but then that populates to our personal schedules. And we had a couple of weeks where we didn't have a caller in one of the areas, and I had other clients of mine trying to schedule times where...
Dude, get your personal schedule out of our show.
So what I did...
WTF, man.
So what I did is I went into my personal schedule and I marked it as off, which then went back to the Therapy Brothers page and said, there's no availability to sign up to be a caller right now because it's all full. So
Yeah, wow.
that was my bad. I had Chase come back around and be like, hey, Tyler, do you know that you just messed up the whole system? So,
Yeah.
so it should be now clear. If you'd like to come be on the show, therapybros.com, come sign up and come talk to us.
There's availability to come on right now because
I created some space for
blocked
anybody
off
who wants
for
to
a-
sign up.
So if you have a question, whatever the question is, we'd love to talk to you. And whether you're a single person, gay, straight, Christian, non-Christian, atheist, we don't care. Come on our show, talk to us where you're at in the recovery process. Again, it's therapybros.com.
That's right.
Just fill out our little questionnaire and say you want to be a guest. So,
Get in while there's some availability.
Yeah, well, we have some availability.
Yeah.
So speaking of guests, we got some good guests here with us today. So we have Victor and Lara. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
If you guys can tell us a little bit about your story and give us some context as to what's going on, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah. So we are about a year out from D-Day, almost exactly. So I won't go into too many details about D-Day itself, but it kind of basically blew up our lives. It was, very painful and traumatic. After that happened, we were separated for 5 months, and I asked Victor to fight for me, and he didn't really the way that I pictured. And so that was very painful in itself as well. And so after those 5 months, he moved back in, and we've been living together since. But I think for me, and something that I have felt really lonely in, is the wound, like the specific wound that has come up with this. I don't know if this is relevant, but I do have my master's in counseling, so I know a little bit about addiction. And so I get it. Like, it's still really painful, but I get addiction in a sense. And I get the lying because it's to cover up the addiction. And so I get those behaviors, like I understand them. But one of the most painful things for me is Victor not showing up, because I feel like he kind of put together this person that I wanted, before we got married. Like he put on these traits like, oh, you like that I do this, so I'll do this, and you like that I do this, so I'll do that. And so he kind of sold me this person that, I married, and so this happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, like who are you? And so we're, trying to figure that out now, but now every day that he doesn't show up, it kind of reopens that wound that we've had since before. But then, of course, D-Day blew it up. And so every single day is just so like exhausting and painful when he doesn't show up. And it shows up in a lot of ways. Like he struggles to initiate conversations about like important things like finances or our future, things like that. Or sex is something that we really struggle with. Like he really struggles to initiate sex. Like yeah, a lot, or like physical touch. And so, or like even being vulnerable and where he's at, like he always wants to be better. And so, this is something we were talking with a sponsor about actually recently. And so, I don't know, like for me, I think it'd be better if like, hey, I can't hold this conversation right now. I don't have the capacity for it. Let's table it. But he just does it. And I think he's just doing it just to please me all over again under the umbrella or like under the name of recovery, but it's kind of the same patterns. And so it's very, very painful. And yeah, and I also am willing to talk about the other side. So, since he is a Mr. Nice Guy, like what is that? Because I'm more direct, and so I'm more of an angry person and not very patient. So I'm like, does that mean I'm a Mrs. Mean Girl? Like because it kind of fits in, like his things fit in with mine, and I am very critical, and so I know I sometimes add to his shame and things like that. So like I want to take responsibility for my side too. But I guess my question is, what do I do meanwhile while I wait for him to show up? Like, do I just be patient? Because it's, I could be patient before, but now that the D-Day happened, I don't feel like I have very much patience anymore. And then there's also my things that I am a very angry person, which is like I'm working on that. But like, yeah, just we keep getting stuck there. So
Are you seeing positive change in him? Like, are things getting better, or are they kind of staying the same when it comes to the Mr. Nice Guy and trying to be perfect?
I am seeing change, yeah. Just a
Okay.
little bit like initiating a little bit more, or like drawing certain boundaries even with me, things like that. So I am seeing like an increase, but yeah, I tell him all the time because the wound is so deep. It's like I need a lot more, and so like yeah, but I do
Yeah.
see like a trend upwards.
Okay.
Something that's kind of part of this, I think part of this struggle and the riddle for so many couples with this specific kind of issue you're bringing up. I'm really glad you brought up both sides of this too. Is that the things that you're actually wanting from him? Some of those things are things like you want more authenticity from him. You want him to have boundaries and have an opinion and have some strength and do some pursuing, and yet some of those things probably are things that actually set you off when he steps into them sometimes, where there's an argument that happens that normally wouldn't happen because he would just roll over and not have it. And so there's maybe some tension in the relationship, even though, and I would say that's a step in the right direction, even though it doesn't feel very good to have it. And so it's hard to see that some of the pathway forward includes some pain when all we're really wanting to do is not be in pain. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. I think also part of it, like it that I think that has shown up, but a lot of it is also it's so I mean, I've told myself for so long, like I want to be a really nice person, a really kind, compassionate person since I was like in middle school. I made that my mission. And so to like we use this language of like to swing to the other side of the pendulum seems so terrifying. And like to even swing a little bit seems like, oh, I'm heading that direction. I don't want to head that direction. And so it's uncomfortable for me, and then I don't know how uncomfortable it is for you when I start swinging that, but that I get scared because I know she has had experience like in her life with, the other side of that pendulum with like angriness and her family and stuff. And I worry that like if I start stepping into that, I'm just gonna I'm just going to continue the cycle that she's experienced forever, and even that I
Is
have.
that the only option? Is to swing from like being a doormat or just very compliant and trying to being a total jerk?
No, I know it's not. Like I know I want to end up here. Like these are the two sides, and I want to end up in the middle. But I think like it's like swinging on a vine. Like you see where you're going, and you can only imagine you're going to end up all the way on the other side. Like it's hard to imagine just like stopping in the middle.
Well, so think about it this way. Instead of thinking about it as a pendulum where there's like weakness and then there's weakness in passiveness on one end or compliance, Mr. Nice Guy, and then there's weakness on being a jerk and aggressive and mean on the other end. Um, the middle, actually, the middle is not where we want to hit. Um, this whole pendulum is this pendulum of manipulation to be accepted and to be loved. And what you want to do is get off that pendulum altogether and figure out how to have strength, and know yourself and love yourself enough that you don't need her. And when you get to the point where you don't need her, you can show up so much for her. You can empathize, you can hold space. You don't need to be nice, you don't need to be mean, you need to be you. And once you learn how to be you and you don't need her, then you can create trust and safety in the relationship. Um, do you see what I'm saying, Victor?
Yeah, I think I do. I it's kind of crazy because I feel like we talk about like the pendulum, but the way you're saying it, I guess, especially for myself, I've never thought about am I using the pendulum to like just measure how I am to her, like just as a measure of where I am, instead of not measuring myself and just trying to show up.
Yeah,
But
we're talking about the struggle here being your codependency to her. Like that's the struggle here. So if you're being mean because you think that that's what she wants, and now I'm being rigid and I'm a man, you're still codependent. If you're being way compliant and nice and trying to get her to like you, you're still codependent.
mm,
So what's the difference between being interdependent and codependent?
I guess interdependent is I can rely on myself and she can rely on herself and we can rely on each other.
That's it. You stand on your own 2 feet. And so that's the work to look at here. Um, to go through the process of how do I do that? And when I stand on my own 2 feet, what does that look like? And what does that feel like in our relationship? Um, you know, I've heard like I've heard spouses before say to Mr. Nice Guys, like, I just want you to disagree with me. I just want you to fight with me. Like, I want you to like have an opinion. Just have your opinion that's not my opinion or the opinion that you think that I want you to have. Just have a freaking like I want to know you. I just want to know who the heck you actually are. And when Victor, when you say early on, I chose to be a compassionate, loving person. If you chose to be a compassionate, loving person because you felt like that was the way that you could survive in this world and be accepted and be loved, that's actually not compassion and love. What is that?
Manipulation.
Yeah. Now I'm not trying to get you on a shame spiral here, right? But do you see the difference
Yeah.
between the two? So what is compassion and love, Victor?
Um, I mean, I think that's something that's hard for me to answer because I don't know. I when people ask me like, how do you love someone or how do you receive love? I don't know. Like I don't know what that looks like. All I know is like, well, I just gotta try, like I gotta show effort and I don't know, just try to show up how I think people want to be loved, but
Mhm.
it's scary to say I don't know.
Yeah.
Laura, what's going through you? What are you feeling and thinking right now as you're kind of hearing this conversation take place?
Um, just that, like, yeah, I mean, it makes me sad for Victor, because like we have talked about like how he grew up and stuff, and um not knowing really what love is, and then not loving himself, and so how can he love somebody else? Um and he's so afraid and so fearful, and that just shows up so much in our interactions. Like sometimes I think he's actually like scared of me. And again, on the other side, like I can be scary, but um yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like I don't know how we can help each other, or like, yeah, we just keep getting stuck.
And if I can add, like it is frustrating because like I know you don't have the patience to not feel loved. Like you want to feel loved in our marriage, but the more that I don't know how to love, I fear like, well, I just got to try something. I got to like make some kind of effort, show up, and because I still don't know what's going on, I still don't know how to show up. But I want her to feel loved.
Victor, you're do you mind if I bring up the first night of the retreat?
Sure.
Can I just so do you know why I chose you?
No.
So do you want to share what happened?
Yeah, so there was an exercise where, we were in groups giving feedback to people and or to like the other retreaters that were there and stuff. And um we were in a group of three, and the two guys I was with gave feedback to each other, and then I didn't get to give feedback. And there was a couple guys like that. And then at the end, you had been like, okay, well,
And when we say feedback, we mean like getting really honest to the point where it's uncomfortable,
yeah, we had
and
get in your
looking
face.
in each other's eyes while we do it, right?
Yeah. And there was a few other guys, and like you had them give feedback to people because they didn't have an opportunity. But then I was next, and then for whatever reason, you were like, "Hold on, I'll stand
I'd
up."
I'd never met you, have I?
No, I'd never
Yeah.
met you. I've only heard you, but you'd never heard me or anything. So
And I called you up, right? To do
and
what?
to give you feedback,
To give me feedback. And why did I choose you? I looked around the room and I thought, who's the last person in this room that would want to look me in the eyes and give me feedback?
yeah, it definitely
And
was me.
I could feel your energy. I could feel like, hey, he doesn't want to, especially to me, I'm running this retreat and I'm this, like, he doesn't want to get up and look me in the eye and like, and be honest with me. Right. Because I could feel that like you didn't want to like cause the waves, like create the discomfort. And that's why I called you up. Now, I did want your feedback too. Um, but Victor, I was picking up on a man who doesn't know who he is to have the strength to be able to just be honest with me. Now, your feedback might have been totally off, might have been spot on, but what I wanted and what I would love is for you to stand up and just give it to me, whatever it is, so I can know you. Right now, we're identifying. I think we're identifying that there's been a breakdown in an understanding of self here. Right? There's been trauma that's come into your life that has made it so that you haven't known how to trust yourself. Right? We've identified that. Okay, so let's talk about, can that shift? Can that change? And how? Rather than just say, yeah, that's who Victor is. Victor is a guy that doesn't know himself, and he's Mr. Nice Guy and codependent and all these other things. That's not where we want to end this, right? So how do you shift into knowing yourself despite your trauma? Tyler has all the answers for that, luckily. So
Well, Brannon, thanks for queuing it all up and leaving me the easy part. No, no, yeah, I actually think this is actually a discussion not just for Victor though, Brannon. This is a discussion for both Laura and Victor,
yes,
because because Laura, you're here in this process and you're feeling a lot of the same things that I'm sure Brannon just pointed out. Like, I just want your opinions. I just want you to show up. I just want you to. And Victor hears that and he's like, oh, I better hurry and scramble and do this next thing. I better hurry and scramble and do that next thing. And that's not even what was really being asked for. What's being asked for is, I want your authenticity. Like, that's what's being asked for. So how do you tap into actually identifying, and this is maybe for both of you, how do you tap into identifying what's actually authentic? Because I actually think it's probably authentic, Victor, that you are a guy who wants to be kind and caring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is that's part of your value system. Like, you're not going to want to fully kill that part.
Right.
But you want to be able to act from a place of knowing that's who you are, rather than doing it so that I can make Lauda happy, or I can not be rejected, or I can avoid conflict, or whatever else it is. How do you tap into those things?
I mean, I know, well, I think some of it is like doing things that are uncomfortable for me to like, yeah, kind of make waves or make things to like give my opinion and know that the people might not agree with it, or that people might not, or that Lauda might not agree with it, or that I feel a certain way about what we're talking about. And I don't know, I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind.
There's this magical place of in a relationship, in a healthy interdependent relationship, of honesty and empathy at the same time. And so you look at different situations. Like, let's say Laura wants to go to dinner at a certain place and Victor wants to go to another one. And for you to both say, this is where I want to go. And then have empathy and understand, like, oh, for you to come to this place, like that, like, thank you. Like, I feel you. I feel what it's like for you not to get your way tonight. You take sex, for example. Hey, I want sex, so I'm going to initiate. You don't. And good, you're just being honest that you don't. I want you to be honest. But you can still have empathy for me. I put it out there, and we're not having sex. So that there's that uncomfortable place of, we're individuals. We can both be honest. I want sex. I don't want sex. Great. We can care about each other and not give in because we feel sorry for the other person, or we're going to consume them for our self-worth. So that honesty and empathy together shows that strength in a partnership. And Victor, what it sounds like where it's breaking down, or it has for years, is the honesty piece there. That you're so trying to connect to how she's feeling, what she's, and then behind the scenes, the sex addiction is kind of taking care of you in ways, versus just learning how to show up in that relationship and navigate that. Right. And so the practice is that discomfort of, let me be honest here. I'm not going to be a jerk, but like, I'm just going to be honest. Now, Laura, there's a tendency when a man lacks healthy masculinity, there's a tendency for the woman to step in as the strength and the masculinity in the relationship, which then undermines the whole dynamic and the whole process. It undermines what you actually want in the relationship. So your work is to say, this isn't my role. I'm not gonna, step in here or be way too strong or over opinionated. I'm gonna hand it back to him. And he's squirreling over there like, I don't want to have an opinion. I don't know what to say. And you're like, I'm waiting for you. Like, I'm not going to tell you what is. You need to like show up, right? What are you thinking as I'm saying that?
I was just thinking about something that I do with him sometimes, like when he's telling me a story, and he's like waiting for my reaction. Sometimes I just like sit and stare at him blankly to let him figure out like what does he think about it. And then he like, yeah, I do see him like scrolling. Like he'll go back on it or he'll be like, what am I saying the right thing? Or I'm like, and I wait till the end and I'm like, okay, yeah, like yeah, you were not or yeah, whatever the situation is. So I was just thinking of that. And earlier when you were speaking about like the restaurant thing, even when you were saying that, in my head I was like, that would never happen. Like if he wanted to go somewhere and I wanted to go somewhere, like we would go where I wanted to go. Like
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
and for sex too, like he is so like with my moods and stuff, like is constantly reacting and responding that like if I'm stressed, you know, I don't even think about sex for like a week or something, you know, and he picks up on that, so he won't ever bring it up. And then you know, I start thinking about it one day, and I'm like, hey, it's been like 2, 3 weeks, but you haven't said anything. But it's not until like I'm feeling something that I'm the one that brings it up, and then I'm like, hey, like why is it always this cycle like and then it goes back to the same thing of like, well, I saw that you were stressed or I saw that you were this and I saw this and then I didn't want to bring it up because of that. And then I'm like, it doesn't matter, like I still want to know your desire, your needs and wants, and for you to pursue me, like that is the one of the biggest things we talk about is like I want to be pursued, I want to be loved, I want you to initiate, but he's so worried about where I'm at and what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, that is just like a response to me.
Yep.
Victor, what would happen if you, in your mind, like what's the story that goes on behind the scenes if you were to actually go and share with Laura that you were pursuing her sexually or that you wanted to be with her, even though you could tell that maybe she wasn't having the best day ever? Like what goes on in your brain if that was like, let's say today that happened and you're like, man, I'm feeling really drawn to her today. I'm going to go pursue her, even though I can tell she's really wrapped up in work. Like, what's the story that goes on in your head?
I think for me, it's that I don't want to show up as someone who like just wants sex and doesn't care how the other person like feels or has like had their day. I want to be aware of her. And so to even offer it or to even suggest that I want sex would point to me as like, honestly, like to point to me as like a pig or something that just wants
Mm.
sex, doesn't care.
Mm.
But that's not what you're saying. Like, you still care about her and you want to pursue her and be close to her that way. And if you were to pursue her, that would mean you're a pig.
I mean, when you put it that way, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's just,
Would
yeah,
she see you as a pig?
I don't think so.
What happens if she tells you, no, I'm having a rough day at work?
I mean, I think if I heard that, I would understand. I'd probably feel a little rejected, but at least I would know she said no.
Yeah. That's what I think where Brannon's going here is, can the relationship have the space for both of those things? Can the relationship have the space for you to pursue her, for her to say, hey, not in the mood today for whatever reason, for you to feel a little bit of rejection, but be okay with the fact that she was honest and you were honest, and that it's okay that it's a little bit uncomfortable, but you'd rather have that than the scramble that you always do to try to make sure she's happy with you? And that's a question for both of you. Can your relationship have room for that space?
I want it to.
This kind of goes to where your question was way early on in the call, out of where it was, what's my part in all of this? I like where you were going, where you know the conversation's happening and you sit there and wait for him to actually share his own opinions before you jump in. I love that. That's actually that's an okay exercise to do. I love that, Victor, you're willing to lean into that and share some of those things. Both of you guys need to regularly get in touch with why you're together and what you both want out of the relationship, and make sure that that's always out, at least in the peripheral vision of what you're working towards. so that when something happens and we're talking about the dinner thing, like that's a great one to start with. Like, Victor, you probably ought to take a stand on dinner once in a while.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe she's even saying, I don't even like that place. And you're like, I know it would be a big sacrifice for you to go, but you asked me what I wanted and that's what I wanted. So I'm sharing it. Right. Like that's a simple conversation probably feels like pulling teeth to you, Victor, but that's a great exercise. That's a great start because that's an area of life where both of you guys could probably handle the conflict of, yeah, we both have a different opinion. We both see each other's perspective. It's okay that all of that is true.
But it's this weird. So for Laura, it's this weird thing of like, dang it, I'm used to like this dude like trying to give me my way all the time, and like, to oh my gosh, like I don't agree with him. Like I want to tell him how freaking wrong he is, or argue this out, or like I don't agree with him. And then there's this other thing going on, hopefully inside of you, that's like, but thank you. Thank you for being honest. So I appreciate your honesty. I'd like to continue to discuss this, talk about it. And I'd like for you to continue to show up honest with me. And there's that tension there. And this is what's healthy in any relationship. When two individuals show up honest, there's some tension because they see the world differently sometimes. So can we navigate that together and maintain our honesty and not just always give in and then resent? And you see what I'm saying, Laura? So it's this like, hey, I kind of hate this, but I really like it. I like that I'm in a relationship with a man who knows who he is, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what I'm realizing that I wanted. It makes me think back to like my sister one time. She didn't know how to navigate me because I am one, or I used to be somebody, or I'm trying to work on it, who gets defensive, and I'm very opinionated, and I have my thoughts, and yeah, like I can get angry really quickly. And so I remember my sister one time asking me like, how does Victor deal with you? Like, how does he do it? And I was like, I don't know, he just does. And so, but now through this healing journey, I've realized he just said yes, like he just went with it. That's how he dealt with me. Like
Yeah.
I to a certain extent I like that, like I found comfort in that, or like I finally felt like I had a voice or an opinion, which maybe I didn't growing up. And so but now that I'm working on myself too, and like becoming less defensive and just taking responsibility for my actions as well, yeah, I'm seeing that too, of like, yeah, it is easy and it is comfortable and it is nice to have somebody go along with you all the time. And maybe that's what I saw at one point, but
Mm-hmm.
deeper down, it's like, yeah, I'm married to this person. Like I want him to be my spouse. I want him to stand up for what he believes in, to say what he thinks, to argue. I know you guys, and we've talked about this, like the metaphor of the tree and the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And I want that, but yeah, and sometimes it just feels like I'm the wind and he's the response wind or something. But
Mm-hmm.
but I have realized that like, even though it is uncomfortable, of like, man, I didn't get my way, like deep down, I still do want that, of like, okay, that's who you are, and I can respect that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the practice, that's the work that you guys have, relationally speaking. So Lara, let's say you're actually really mad at him over something. You said you get angry sometimes, you're feeling really angry and resentful, but you also actually want him to engage with you. There's the both and of, I'm really upset right now. In fact, I might even be hating you right now, and I'm glad you're here. I don't want you to leave, and I'm mad. It's both, or it's like, is there a way to be authentic while inviting the thing that you still want in those moments? That's hard work to do, because the emotions want to hijack you too and be like, well, it's like, but for you, Victor, if all you get every time you try to step into something is then the angry part of her back down, there's that internal part of you that's like, nope, Mr. Nice Guy's the way to go. Like, yes, let's just stop fighting. Like, I don't want to fight anymore. Right. But if she's coming in and saying, hey, we're probably going to have a disagreement about this, I'm happy to have you disagree with me. In fact, I want to know your opinions before we make any decision. And then, Victor, you even take the one step of just sharing your opinions. And then she's like, I still think we should do this. As long as she says, I see you, and I still think we should do this, that's a step in the right direction. And then at that point, if you want to, you can go along with it. If that's part of your personality and you don't want the conflict, at least it's a step in the right direction that she knows what was actually inside of you and how you felt about it, instead of just, oh yeah, I was totally thinking we should do that too. Whatever you say, whatever you want, let's just not fight. And so can I invite that response? I almost want to invite it in. So Laura, yours is, I need to slow my approach and invite it in, but then be true to who I am because I'm good at that. And Victor, your responsibility inside of those discussions is to step in with courage and actually share your feelings and opinions, because you're already going to want to understand her. You already have antenna that are way long. You probably feel like you know what she's feeling before she even tells you a lot of the time. And so your job is to step in with that one side, a little bit more of courage of this is me. And Laura, your approach is slower while still showing me. And that creates space for the practice to take place inside of the relationship.
No, make no mistake about this. What Tyler just said is true and awesome, and that's what you should practice. But this issue is not a relational issue. Your relationship is a symptom of the actual issue at hand. And Laura, I think you found a man like Victor because of your fieriness and I want my way. And what your sister said is interesting, right? Like, I want my way. And so you found a weak man that you can dominate. And then years into the marriage, it's like, oh shoot, like, yeah, I don't want weak man. I want strong man, right? And you're like, Victor, step up. And he's kind of like, well, this is what you wanted, right? But Victor, you're like, the sex addiction is fascinating to me in all of this, because Victor, it seems like you absolutely don't want to make waves, especially with the people you love the most, your wife. It seems like your biggest nightmare is to hurt her the way that you have with your sex addiction, right? So it's to look at it and say, then why would you go do those things? And to me, that shows a level of desperation, of needing or searching for love, of maybe feeling resentment inside of yourself and needing to feel some power somewhere elsewhere. And so there's a reason why those things happened. And I'm not justifying those things in any way, but there's a reason why those things happened. And your soul is saying, I need more. Something's got to change. And I'm not blaming Laura in any way, right? But can you see that? You work so hard not to hurt her or make her sad, and yet that happened, right? So something needs to shift.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of it has also been like, like to show up as like the Mr. Nice Guy. I want to be just taking care of her and making sure I can be attentive to her needs. And part of that is like, she doesn't need to pay attention to me at all. Like, she doesn't need to know what I need, what I feel, if I feel weak, if I feel not seen. And so I will just take care of it on my own. And I never intended to ever go as far as I did, but it just kept going, and I just kept choosing things that I think made me feel like, well, I'm just taking care of myself in whatever way I can so that I can take care of her completely.
Yeah, you can hear it there.
I like what Brannon was saying about, like, I was giving the relational practice thing, but I like what Brannon was saying about the fact that you guys' relationship is actually a gift to one another to work on your own individual issues. Like, it can be seen that way. It's probably extremely frustrating right now, but that's why you guys are together, is it's a gift that you get to work on those things. And I wonder, Victor, like, if Laura came to you in whatever way, like she wanted to do an act of service for you, or she wanted to pursue you sexually, or she wanted to be kind to you in some way, would you have a way of trying to flip it on its head and turn around and make sure you were making sure she was taken care of, or you were doing the service, or you were the one taking care of her? Like, can you receive her gifts very well?
I don't think I do. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it that in depth, but I think I do that often where if, like she's going out of her way to like show that she loves me, that she wants to pursue me, that she wants to be with me. I quickly am like, oh shoot, like I need to respond. I need to like, or I need to make sure like, hey, like, wow, you did so well. Um, and I see like, but not in the way of like, I feel loved and thank you. It's just like, wow, you're so amazing.
Yeah. What would happen if you came home? And I don't know if Laura would ever do this, but what would happen if you came home one day and she was just saying, "Hey, I haven't been able to connect with you for a long time. Let's just sit down. I want to just rub your feet for a minute and talk to you and hear about your day." Would you turn around and be like, "No, no, no, let me rub your feet and let's talk and I'll hear about your day"?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what would it be like for you to actually say, "Wow, that's really nice of you. Thank you." And actually allow her to follow through on doing that act of service for you? What would be going on the inside of you?
I think you kind of said something to me on this side right now, but yeah, I think I would then also internalize like, oh, well, I'm not doing enough. Like I think, and obviously it's the consequences of what I did, but the addiction to betrayal also makes me feel like, well, now everything is just off level so much. Like I owe her so much to make up for the hurt that I've caused. I need to show up even more caring and patient for her, but I'm
Yeah.
doing just like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the nice guy coming out. And what you don't realize in all of that is that you're actually robbing her of an opportunity to connect with you. You're actually being selfish in that moment where she's here saying, "I'm offering myself to the relationship because you are who I want to connect with." And you're like, "No, no, 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 no. I still owe you. Let's do it this way because then I can feel like a good boy and then you're taken care of and I don't put you out at all. And I don't, when in reality, the best thing you could do in that moment is say, "That is so nice of you. Thank you." And it would probably be a massive amount of work for you to then allow that to take place.
yeah,
And yet you'd be offering her a gift because what she's done is she's come to you and offered you a gift. And it's like, here she is offering a present to you. And you're like taking her present and like smacking it to the ground and then turning around and picking up a present with a bow and being like, "No, this is what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to give you my present." Like, and she's like, "That's not what I wanted. I wanted to offer you the gift." And I think there's even like a scriptural reference somewhere that says, "What doth the profit of man if he's given a gift and he received not the gift? Both the giver and the receiver go away sorrowing." And it's like, yeah, there's a missed opportunity for connection because she's coming for bids for connection, not just through her anger, but through her generosity, her kindness, her service. And if you never receive it, then the only way she's ever able to reach you is her anger.
mm,
But that's not who she wants to be all the time either. I'm putting words in your mouth, Lauda, so correct me if I'm wrong. But she wants connection with you in all those other ways too.
I think that's something that I've like literally within the past like week or two that I've kind of been telling myself is when she's angry, I try to remind myself like she has a right to be angry, but I know she probably doesn't want to be angry. She doesn't want to live there.
It's exhausting.
It doesn't help. Like I don't feel at the point where I know what to do, but I think it helps find like a little more peace of mind instead of like feeling like there's just this like wave crashing over me.
When we
I love
talk,
that line of thinking because it allows you to then also step into seeing her in a different light than just being angry. You get a chance to actually maybe look beneath the anger and say, she doesn't want to stay there. What's going on here for her? And maybe that's even a curious question back to her that might lead to a conversation that's hard.
if
I cut you off, Brandon. Go ahead.
no, this is good. This is really good. Victor, I'm just thinking, if she gave you a certain look, can you can you not take that personally? If she said a certain thing. Now, what we talk about her anger, what if her anger isn't about you ever? Can we go that far with it? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, let's say you did something and she's angry. Is that about you?
My instinct is to say yes.
Is it about your self-worth?
I don't know if it's about my self-worth. I think it's like she's tired of me. And she's like,
Okay. So when I say it's not about you, what if she is tired of you? If you know who you are and you know your worth, then you are you and your worth unto yourself, independent of her. So so then you can tolerate her being tired of you. I can handle her being tired of me. That's okay. I can tolerate her rejection, her anger, her sadness, whatever those biggest triggers are. Now, your trauma's coming up, saying, I'm scared that I'm not lovable. In fact, I know that I'm not lovable. And so when she has those emotions, that's just evidence of that trauma. It's evidence of that. Um, and so what you're doing is you're shame screening all the time with her, trying to be lovable. When her anger isn't about you, I am lovable. I know who I am. Then I can actually connect to her anger, or I can have boundaries with it. If she's calling me names and yelling and screaming, I can say, look, this isn't about me, so therefore I'm not going to fix it right now. I'm going to have some boundaries with her. And you can show up in that strength, in that authenticity, in that moment, in that empathy, and in that honesty, right? So do you know who Robert Glover is?
no.
Robert Glover wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Oh, I've heard of the
Um,
book.
yeah. So he wrote that book, and what do you know? Robert Glover is a recovering sex addict. What do you know? Mr. Nice Guys run rampant in this with sex addiction. Like, and if you think about that, it's like, well, why? Why do Mr. Nice Guys have sex addictions? Do you know why?
Because of the shame?
The shame is underneath. But why are they acting out sexually? So they're being Mr. Nice Guy. They're being trying to get their wives to like them. Like, look at me, I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. Yet they're acting out behind the scenes. It's because they use women for their self-worth. So you see how sex addiction fits in perfectly with that? And so
Especially because, Brannon, the sex addiction gets to be way less vulnerable than actual relationship with your partner.
exactly. So it's less likely to get rejected and hurt, and you can still get that need met of wanting to be desired and have those sexual experiences. And so now I can be less vulnerable and still get those needs met, as opposed to working through it with a real woman who might not like me at times. And I try and I try and I try to get her to like me, but like sometimes she doesn't, and I can't take that anymore. So I'm going to get my needs met elsewhere.
Mm.
And so if you look at that, the issue is actually that when I say the codependency, it's that consumption of a woman for my okayness, right? And so for you, Victor, when we talk about this, and you've dove into this, but it's about trauma work. It's about having those experiences where you shift from I'm unlovable, I'm unlovable, I'm unlovable to, oh, like maybe I'm lovable. Whoa, maybe I'm the man in many good ways. Whoa, but you have to have experiences of that. When you looked me in the eye and said, Brannon, I can't remember your feedback exactly, but it was pretty spot on. I remember I was like, oh, dang it, like he's good at giving feedback. Um, when you looked me in the eye, you didn't die. You were fine. You, I liked you even more once you gave me that feedback, right? And that's just a little tiny example of an experience where it's like Victor stepped up, you had to. Thank you. You gave me some critical feedback. We're okay. You're okay. So you need to have more of those experiences to know I'm okay with who I am, right? Laura, you need to um, allow those experiences to happen, right? To not dominate, or to just to back off and say, okay, give it. I liked your story about I just hold my face normal because I'm not gonna like show my hand yet. Yeah, I like
He's
that.
like telling the story, like watching, like, did she smirk? Did she smile? Like, okay, we'll go that way. Or, oh, I'll turn. And you're just like straight poker face. And he's like, yeah. Like, finally he gets to the end of the story. You're like, okay, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So I'll do more of that.
Right. I'm just kidding. It does make it hard. It's really uncomfortable. I feel like I have my train of thought, and then she just stares at me. I'm like, oh shoot, like, where do I do? What do I do? What do I say? How do I don't know.
Yeah, I think sometimes in the case of Mr. Nice Guy, learning to actually say what you're going to say and then be still is one of the hardest things to do. To actually be still and let whatever's going to be, instead of like, oh, that didn't work, I'll scramble to the next thing, or I'll scramble to this thing, or I'll do that. Or it's like you get done sharing your piece with her, and then you be still, and she can have her opinions, and you can listen and hold space for her and be kind to her because you're good at that part of it, and still stay still. That's hard to do, but that's something that actually feels safe in some ways to your partner. So I know we've kind of been all over the map today, you guys. We're just about out of time. What's going through you right now? Thoughts, feelings, last questions?
I think for me, it helps to know kind of the direction that is helpful. Because like even that little exercise about keeping my face still, like even that's hard for me because I am very opinionated and like I sometimes do think I have all the answers and I know Victor does too. He looks to me to like, especially because, I've studied about, relationships and things like that. And so like he thinks I have the right way to do things and I know I can act that way too, like, well, really you should have done this, or really you should have been like this, or because of this. And so I think it does take work for me as well to like sit there and like Brannon said, like let him have that space to be himself.
Mhm.
Awesome.
I just want Tyler, can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
That might make someone in particular kind of uncomfortable, but um Victor is the man. Like he is the man. And from the moment I met you, Victor, I could feel that from you. Like this kind, compassionate heart is real. And yeah, you've used it to manipulate but you are a powerful, important son of God. And I know that. I feel that. I wish you could see that and feel how I feel about you inside of you, Victor. Um and so doing the work to actually get yourself there is the work to do. And you have a woman who's stuck by your side through hell in many ways, and she's still sitting here and she's still talking to us about making your relationship better. That's awesome. You got a good chance here to redo this and to do it differently. And Victor, you just got to stay open. You got to stay humble, but you also got to take some risks and be courageous through this process. You're going to be just fine. Okay. And Lara, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being open. And it's awesome you're a fellow therapist. So thank you for doing the work that you do too.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a treat to have both of you guys on. Thank you for your willingness to come and share your story. I know there are so many people listening to this right now going, that's our story. So thank you for your willingness to put it out there and let us chew on things for the sake of not only you, hopefully you got something beneficial, but for everybody else listening. And to everybody else listening, thank you for being here. And if you feel like you're getting something, especially from the guests that come on, one of the best ways that you can support the show while also helping the guests is to go leave a review and reference their episode and what you learned. And thank you. And until next time, you guys keep on keeping on.
We'll see ya.